One. All right, everybody. Welcome to the second semi-annual, tri-monthly, bi-weekly, fourth annual shit show. Sorry this hasn't been a regular monthly thing like I wanted it to be, but I'm fucking busy. And much as I'd love to do this every month, there's no telling whether or not my daughter, my 1-year-old, is even going to let me get through this in one piece without cutting, which I'd like to avoid. This is the Team Almy, official Team Almy. Shit happens when you party naked. Live commentary for the film Grandma's Boy, 2006 classic, absolute classic of a film. I have the DVD right here. Of course, I'm sure if you've been inside a Walmart between the years of 2006 and 2009, you probably saw this guy hanging off the shelf. So this is the DVD. This is not the Blu-ray, of course. Now that Blu-ray is a thing, you can get those. I got this in 06. It must have been, I don't know, summer, early fall of 06. So I bought the DVD because Blu-rays really weren't quite a thing. I mean, they might have been a little bit of a thing at that point, but they were a pretty minor thing, and they weren't releasing a ton of stuff on Blu-ray, and I didn't own a Blu-ray player, so I wasn't buying shit on Blu-ray. And I have resisted upgrading to the Blu-ray because this version of the DVD comes with this slipcase, and you can't get them like that anymore. Even back in like 08, it was just that first run of these DVDs that came with that slip cover. The slip cover, I don't know if it's supposed to look like brown paper, like it's like wrapping paper or whatever. But anyway, I'm just weird about like my DVD and Blu-ray and 4K collection. And if there's a version of the disc that's like rare or hard to get and they don't make it like that anymore, of course, that's the one that I want to buy or keep because, it's rare and everybody else can kiss my ass. So that's the story about that. We'll get started on this movie here in just a second. We will begin from the very beginning. So the 20th Century Fox logo should be on your screen so you can prepare yourself. If you're a member of the Patreon, of course, patreon.com/Team Almy, the Team Almy Patreon, you can watch this video. You just watch it. You can watch me talk about it. You'll see my little head there, and then you'll see the movie going. You can watch this on Patreon. And so if you're a patron, I encourage you to watch it there. If you're not a patron, I encourage you to become a patron and then go watch it there. It's available to all tiers because I don't know, I'm not that much of an elitist. I mean, I kind of am. But if you're not a patron, then you might be listening to this audio only. And if you are listening to this in the audio only form on like a podcast RSS, like Shit Happens When You Party Naked podcast RSS, then, get out your DVD or Blu-ray of Grandma's Boy and get it to about 2 seconds, right? Just as the lights start to flash and the camera starts to pan over the 20th Century Fox. And for you guys watching at home, I will go ahead and share my screen. And let's do this thing. Let's watch this film. So as you can see, we're at 2 seconds. And I'm going to do a quick countdown. And then I'll start. On 3. 3, 2, 1, and click play. Hopefully we're synced up and you're hearing this audio too, and this audio is synced up with your shit. Put your shit on mute. Put your shit on mute because I'm playing the audio so I can talk over the audio. I want to hear it as you hear it because that's how they do it on all the professional discs. So we're looking at the intro screens. Hopefully you're caught up to where we are if you're watching the Blu-ray at home and you're not watching this on Patreon. Shame on you, son of a bitch. Happy Madison Productions. Madison is the name of my youngest daughter. So I'm fond of that name more so than I used to be. This is, of course, like an Adam Sandler production. We all know Happy Madison's Adam Sandler. And in the very opening credits, I'll give them a little credit. They are introducing us to one of the major themes and motifs of this film, and that is video games. So that's pretty cool. And they do it economically. A little bit of animation that I'm sure was not very expensive for them to make. Again, we open on two guys playing video games. And there was a conscious decision made. I'll try to avoid too much trivia, but there was a conscious decision made to begin the film with the word fuck, to have the word fuck be the first utterance of the entire film. So that was a conscious decision that they made. So we know video games are important. We have this sort of video game culture. And it's dated. I mean, honestly, this movie came out, it was released January the 6th, I believe. I think it was January the, don't quote me on that, but it was like early January of 2006. So it's one of those things where we were looking at 2006 technology, but even in 06, the Xbox was several years old at that point. But watching it now, you know, some 15 years later, 16 years later, it's you know, it's kind of weird to see them playing that original Xbox. I remember that thing was like so damn huge. And here's Rob Schneider's. I love Rob Schneider in this movie. I like Rob Schneider in general, even though I really haven't seen a ton of his films. Deuce Bigelow, and only the first one.
For the last 6 months, you don't pay me rent.
But I love his cameos in other films. So even though I'm not like I can't call myself a Rob Schneider fan because I've only seen Deuce Bigelow. I think that's the only Rob Schneider-led film that I have ever seen. Maybe, at least off the top of my head right now. But
the girls of Madame
this guy has an addiction, and it's not just intoxicants and video games. They do a great job with their apartment too. They just make it look like a total shithole. You can imagine, like, you're not bringing girls home to this place and showing them this place with any pride. It has to smell awful. You know, they got weird drapes. They got like towels and paper over the windows. I mean, like, this screams poverty to me.
One extra minute. I have my two friends. They take your testicles and remove them through your anus.
That's a good line. And I think it's been long enough since this movie came out that you could drop that on someone these days. You'd be like, I'm going to take your testicles and I'm going to remove them through your anus. It's a variant on one of my favorite lines, which is kind of the opposite. And when you're dealing with a very attractive woman, you say, I'd suck her clit through her butthole. That is a really classic line to lay on a really classy lady. So consider that in your future. But also, if you're going to remove a guy's testicles, why not go through the anus? It hurts worse. Smoking lamp. Something kind of cute about that.
I'm sorry. Was that expensive piece?
And that's it for Rob Schneider. And it makes you wonder. It makes you wonder, you know, what he got paid for this. Because that had to be just like a couple of hours of actual work. Now, most people will consider Grandma's Boy to be kind of a schlocky, you know, it's not a good film. It's it has been maligned on Rotten Tomatoes, 15% on Rotten Tomatoes. And I think this is a film where the critics got it significantly wrong. 85% is the audience score, and to me that's far more accurate. This film has gained a cult status in the past, you know, 10, 12 years. Now, it did less than $7 million worldwide, so it was a flop. I mean, it didn't cost a lot to make, as you can imagine, but even still, they didn't make a lot of money back off this one. So if you compare it to another Happy Madison film that was released just 3 months after Grandma's Boy, The Benchwarmers, there's a Rob Schneider movie for you. The Benchwarmers made $65 million, but I think this film is better remembered. Stoners love it because, you know, stoner comedy, right? This is like the 21st century successor to Cheech and Chong. What people loved about Cheech and Chong in the 70s, maybe early 80s, people love about Grandma's Boy. And I will contend that Grandma's Boy is a far better movie than people think. A far better movie than the Rotten Tomatoes critics think. It's far better than a 15% film. I think there's a lot in this film to like, and I'm going to talk about that in the course of this commentary. There's a lot of really good like attention to detail in this film where the first thing that you leave the film thinking is how much the filmmakers, the writers, the director, the producers, the production staff really cared about this film. You get the impression that this is kind of a labor of love and sort of a personal thing, more so than like a money grab. I mean, they obviously weren't trying to make a significant amount of money on this film, and I think they had to have known when they were producing it that it was going to be a niche film. I mean, you got a movie that's predominantly about pot smoking, adult video game testers. A guy who's the main character is, he's supposed to be 35, but obviously Alan Covert was something like 41 when he made the film, so he was a little bit older than his character claimed to be, and you can kind of see it. I mean, look at this guy. He does not look 35, almost 36. He honestly doesn't even look 41. I'm 41. I look a fuck up a lot better than Alan Covert. Look at this fucking smooth ass skin. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is that with this film, there's a lot of attention to this detail and this love of this film that's kind of put in. It is kind of a labor of love, even with details like the lighting on the side of the building there. That's supposed to be the light from the pool, but that's not actually light from the pool. They had to light that. Somebody actually lit that artificially to make it look like it was lighting coming off of the pool. It's a small detail, and it did nothing to impress the Rotten Tomatoes critics. And you got to love the footy pajamas. A couple of years after this film came out, I want to say maybe 08, I did find at Walmart, I found a pair of footy pajamas that were much like that one. They had like a print on them. They were like a dark blue with like pink print, whatever the design was. And they were in the women's section. They were women's, but I got the largest size that the Walmart had. I got like the double X, and it fit barely, but it fit enough that I could wear it on Halloween, which was later that month. So I wound up and I got like a pink unicorn stuffy, and I wound up going out. Like we went to like a club. I mean, we went out to like a Halloween party, and it was quite a popular costume. A lot of people really loved that costume. And I wish I still had that thing, because I would definitely dress like that for Halloween again in the future, and maybe like a random movie night like tonight. How great would it have been to show up for this commentary? For all of those of you guys watching this on Patreon, how great would that have been? That would have been great. But alas, I don't know. I have no idea where the thing is. I don't know. Probably got rid of it, chucked it at Goodwill or something like that. Now, this is a controversial scene, I think, for a lot of reasons. For me, I cannot imagine using a doll, an action figure, as masturbation fodder. I just can't imagine it actually doing something for me sexually. It's like a piece of plastic. It's just, there's no detail. There's no, like I can't imagine that being more arousing than any of the other things that you might have at hand. But something else to keep in mind is that when this came out in 06, there was no iPhone. There was no Android. There were Blackberries. There were the T-Mobile Sidekick. If you had one of those, I had one of those, but there was really no handheld portable cell phone device that was also good for porn. Like there's just no, I mean, nowadays we take it for granted. I can open up my iPhone and within moments of pop open Twitter, and then boom, black cock. There we go. No problem finding porn within moments. But back then, he couldn't open his cell phone. It was a flip phone. $100 flip phone, Motorola. You know what I mean? It wasn't even a razor. So, keeps the doll. I love that. But there's, what are your options back then? I guess he could have loaded up a laptop, but even then, I mean, it is strange to think back to 06. I had a laptop in 06. I had a MacBook Pro that I used to do Lightwave and some other cool, fun Final Cut Pro, my two big jams on my MacBook. So, I suppose he could have had a laptop as well that he could have, taken with him to the bathroom and connected to the Wi-Fi and jacked off, because I had Wi-Fi and I had a laptop in 2006. So I should really hold them to the same standard. And I was a broke ass student back then. I'm still a student. I'm just not as broke ass, thankfully. Thank the good Lord Jesus. There's Linda Cardellini. Most of us recognize her as Velma in the first couple of Scooby-Doo films with Freddie Prinze Jr. and his wife, Sarah Michelle Gellar. And I got to say, I saw Scooby-Doo on the way home from Las Vegas. I was so ridiculously hungover. I don't know. We'd spent 4 days in Vegas, and got me and my roommates at the time, my old UGA buddies. I mean, we got destroyed in Vegas for like 3 straight days and didn't sleep. So, I don't have memories really of the Scooby-Doo film, but this is kind of like, oh yeah, Linda Cardellini. This is the film that I first noticed Linda Cardellini, and I thought they did a great job casting her. So here's another great. I know the casting I complained a little bit about with Alan Covert being significantly older looking than how old he's supposed to be. But Linda Cardellini, I think, was a great piece of casting, because she is attractive enough. Right, she's actually quite attractive. I shouldn't downplay that. She's quite attractive, and yet she's not Gal Gadot. Like, if they cast Gal Gadot in that role and Adam Sandler in the Alan Covert role, it's like, come on, really? You really are going to have this woman who's a Greek statue, and she's supposed to be the boss at this video game company. But Linda Cardellini, I mean, it fits her. She's a good casting choice, I think. And I think she's got a good sense of humor. Some of the stuff apparently was ad-libbed by her, some of her antics later in the film, once we get to kind of know her character a little bit more. Some of that stuff was ad-libbed by her, so I got to give her credit for being kind of down-ass hoe. You know what I'm saying? And again, this is a film about where the main character is, supposed to be 35, almost 36, and just total like man-child, right? Is just this total like refusal to completely grow up. He's single. He was living in a shithole with a roommate at the beginning of the film. They got evicted from, but who does that? 20-year-olds, 21-year-olds in college. You live in a shithole with your buddy. But once you graduate and get a job, hopefully you move up to a slightly nicer apartment, not a total shithole where you're using like a beach towel to cover up the fucking window so you can play Xbox and smoke weed all day. But the idea is that, he is kind of a loser. He's sort of living the life that he wants to live. He's not especially unhappy with his lifestyle, but I think that's also characteristic of people who are like really deep into gaming. They may not be accomplishing much besides playing a shit ton of video games. Maybe that's stereotypical of me, and if so, I apologize. If you're a patron and you play a fuck ton of video games, just completely forget I said that. I love you. But this came out at a time where I don't think there was a lot of commentary yet about older adults playing video games. Older men in their 30s and 40s. I mean, I think there was a time, particularly when I was young, video game was looked at as like, that's what kids do when I was a kid. And then I grew up and my generation kept playing video games. I mean, I still play video games. I have a Switch. I was playing Stardew Valley last week. So, no homo. It is what it is. I'd play more video games, actually, if I didn't have kids. I played more video games before I had kids. And if I had never been blessed by the Lord Jesus with daughters that I love so much, then I probably would still play a little bit more video games than I do. But and here we are introduced to JP, Wonderful character, in my opinion. I mean, he's sort of this, he's this nerd that has been incredibly successful with his video games that he programmed, and he had a lot of luck with the first couple iterations. They give this guy a backstory without like really hammering it in. Obviously, he's working on the third installment of his very successful video game franchise, and so he's sort of like an auteur of video games. Video games being an area that they've had auteurs over the years for sure. I'm not super well versed on video game history, but I know enough to know that there are video game creators. I mean, look at somebody like Shigeru Miyamoto with Nintendo. I mean, considered an auteur, or at least the closest thing that video games are going to have to auteurs, in the way that like Spielberg is an auteur, or Hitchcock or something, where you expect something of a Hitchcock film. And it is sort of like this great man type of like auteur theory, is this like sort of one person rests on his or her shoulders, typically his. And JP sort of falls in that category. But also he's just, whatever the stereotype is, massively, massively socially, I don't even want to say awkward, because like a lot of people are socially awkward. He's like socially awkward on steroids. Like his whole personality, you can see, he's got the whole Matrix clothes. They do a joke on him later where they're like, how much are clothes in the Matrix? It's a good joke. I like how they're playing this retro game, playing this eat that frog dick to me, eat it. It's that little detail. I know you didn't hear it because I've got the volume kind of piped down, but you hear Nick Swartzen's character go, eat that frog dick, Timmy, eat it. And it's like that, I'm sure, was ad-libbed, but even still, that like little attention to detail where he stays in character, continues to ad-lib, and then, it's just that becomes layered in with the background noise of the video game and the crowd cheering and Alan Covert's character kind of Alex shit talking the younger guy, and they call him Gray Bush, which I think is great. Is the pubic hair the last hair to go gray? Because I've got gray. Obviously, I've got gray in my beard. You can see my chin. You can see my chin here. But I've also got plenty of gray, like here in the temple areas. I'm really starting to get kind of gray. But like I don't think I've ever found a gray pubic hair before. And I've got chest hair, and I haven't found a gray chest hair yet. But my dad's got chest hair, and his shit is mad gray. His chest hair is. I don't know about his ball hair. He's been shaving his nuts since the 70s, so I haven't seen his ball hair in my whole life. But his chest hair is definitely gray. I don't know how that works, where it's like you're gonna have hair all on your belly and your chest and everything like that, but then your nuts and pubic area are just completely waxed. Because that's what Papa Almy does. He waxes his shit. So I'm told. And then, JP just did his little robot thing, right? He just did his like, adios, turd nuggets. I mean, what a way to leave a room. I will still sometimes, occasionally, if there's a person in the room that I know is familiar with Grandma's Boy, I will leave a room, flick the people off in the room and say adios, turd nuggets, because that's just a great way to leave a room and get people talking about you after you've gone. So this film takes place in July. That's a throwaway line that you might have missed when he first goes to his friend Dante's house, the guy he bought the weed from, the naked guy who he bought the weed from earlier in the film. Of course, he wanted to crash at Dante's place. Didn't get a chance to. Dante said, nah, I'm getting a lion, so you can't stay here. But, he comments that he's putting up his Christmas tree. Dante does. And Alex, of course, says it's July. I am releasing this. Of course, we're doing this commentary live, and I'm releasing this in July. So I have this weird thing about films, and, it makes sense. Like, nobody watches holiday films. I mean, not many people. I'm sure you could find some weirdos out there that will watch like The Grinch Who Stole Christmas starring Jim Carrey in July, but I'm not one of those people. I believe very firmly that a movie has its time and place, and that if there is a film that takes place on Halloween, like Hocus Pocus, I'm not watching Hocus Pocus in February. Fuck off with that shit. Same thing with Christmas films and other stuff. But I'll even take it further, and I will say, if there's a film that's set in July, like Grandma's Boy, I'm not really going to be very inclined to watch this film in, let's say, January or February. Although I will, because it's not holiday related. So if I really get baked. Let's be real. This is a stoner comedy. There's some alcohol consumption as well. Cheers to you guys. I'm drinking a Japanese Sapporo because that's what I have a 12 pack of in my basement. So, but I do like watching films. You know, if there's a movie that's set in the fall, I want to watch it in the fall. I don't want to be thrown off by the imagery. And of course, in a Christmas movie, that would be very prominent. The Christmas imagery would really kind of fuck with you in July. You'd be like, that's weird. I don't want to like Christmas tree. I'm not in the spirit for Christmas in July when it's 90 degrees. I'm sweating balls and I got the AC running. I should not have to turn my AC down so I can hear Jim Carrey deliver lines as the Grinch. And so in his desperation, he goes to live with his grandmother and her two roommates, of course, all elderly women, seniors. We just saw Partridge Family lady. She was in the Partridge Family. Shirley, what the F is her last name? I don't know. I don't want to Google it now because then I will miss parts of this. But of course the running joke is that she thinks he's gay because he's 35 and he's not married. He doesn't have kids. I talked about this on a recent episode of Shit Happens When You Party Naked when I discussed the song by Sloppy Seconds, I Don't Want to Be a Homosexual. And the song is about how people make presumptions about what your life is like. He steps over the spot where she died. So, obviously the joke is she thinks he's gay and she's going to carry it through the whole film, which is excellent. I appreciate the consistency. Again, another sign of the quality of this film is that they carry this joke forward without really beating you over the head with it. It just comes back up a few times. She says that he can love any man he pleases later and stuff like that. So she just rolls with this assumption that he's gay and it never really goes away, which is excellent. Now, this reminds me of a similar experience that I had. He asked, did she die in the bed? No, she rolled out of bed and died right here on the floor. And so he steps over that spot. But then he's also kind of weirded out laying in the bed. Now, when my grandmother died, R.I.P. Grandma Humphrey died at 93, 2 years, a little bit over 2 years ago. And when she passed away, of course, there was going to be a funeral and my grandpa lives alone. Well, now he lives alone. When she passed, he lived alone. Right. And she had just passed. So, I got on a plane, I flew down there and I stayed with him for a couple of days, which I think he told me he appreciated it. Having somebody around in the house with him, somebody he could talk to and commiserate with. And we got fairly drunk actually the first night I was there. And he invited me to sleep in the bed that she died in. I was like, I'll take the couch, dog. I just didn't want to, it was just, I don't know. I'm not superstitious, but I am a little stitious. I don't want to, I don't know, just creepy that grandma died in that bed like 2 nights earlier. It's like, I don't, you know what I mean? I think grandma's ghost would be pretty nice to me. She and I got along very well. In fact, she was she was my very first interview for Shit Happens When You Party Naked. You can go back and listen to one of those. If you're on Patreon, I did publish that interview after she passed away. Anyway, I think her ghost would be nice to me, but even still, I don't want to tempt fate. And B, that's the lady on the far left in that last shot right there. She's on the left. She got the honey, drizzling the honey, and she's got all the pills. She's the crazy one. Gotta appreciate that. I never thought that her shtick was hilarious, but I appreciate this scene. Like, he doesn't have to go to work till 10 or whatever, and the fucking alarm clock woke him up at like 6 a.m. or something, and so she gives him all these house chores that really wind up being like, who paints the fucking siding on the house before going to work? Like, who with a job, a full-time job, is gonna paint the siding of a house? And this is a great joke too. This is a great visual gag where nothing is ever said about this. No lines of dialogue are ever delivered, and he's vacuuming, he lifts the couch, and it's just a bunch of pills and dead cats. Just puts the couch right back down and then just goes about his business. Never mentioning it again. It's never mentioned again for the rest of the film. And it's just a nice little kind of hilarious detail that like he's vacuuming and there's this little tail sticking out. He's like, what the fuck is this? Oh, it's a dead cat. And it's like, I don't even want to, I'm only going to be here for a few more days and get the fuck out. Like the shit you find at grandma's, right? I never found a dead cat underneath my grandma's couch, but could happen.
All right, Alex, I need you to deal with 10 to 15 because those are the real.
So here they're
And
divvying up the levels. All these young guys are like
Yes, and possibly shitting his pants.
enamored with what's her name? Vanessa? Whatever her name is. Her character, the lady character.
all right, you guys.
They're all
It's crunch time.
they're all enamored with her, and they're all like, oh, whatever you want, Samantha. Samantha. Not a V name, Samantha. Whatever you want, Samantha. Whatever you want, Samantha. And then, obviously he's nodding off and he's not kissing her ass. And that's sort of foreshadowing. It's like he's going to be able to get with her because he's not sycophantic toward her. He's not kissing her ass or whatever. He's just a lot more casual, a lot more comfortable with her. He seems to be a little bit more, socially normal, especially compared to somebody like JP, who's also enamored with her, but he kind of also gets his ass kissed enough, being this like great auteur. He expects that he'll be able to impress Samantha, which he's clearly not able to do. And here's an introduction to actually the game that Alex is creating. You might think that he's testing the levels that he was just assigned in the previous scene, but there's a little dialogue here where his grandma asks her, "Hey, asks him, what is this you're working on?" He describes it briefly, and then she wants to play, which is my grandma never said, "Hey, let's play fucking ColecoVision together." I mean, my grandma was blind as shit since she was like 16. She's been legally blind, so I never really expected her to play video games with me because she could barely see. She sat like 2 inches in front of the TV and shit. So, but she did never play video games with me, unfortunately. Although otherwise, obviously everybody recognizes how fucking Dorothy something or other from Everyone Loves Raymond. Unfortunately, she did pass away a few years back. But she does remind me a lot of my grandma. She has the same color hair as my grandma, very similar styling. She's just kind of a friendly older lady. Has all her wits about her. My grandma never lost any of her marbles. She didn't lose a single marble. She was quite sharp throughout her entire life. Unfortunately, old age, and it does what it does to your body, and physically, things didn't get easier. But she was always super sharp. She remembered every event in her life, and she could talk to you. She could talk to you about current events. She was blind as fuck, but she'd listen to the radio and shit. She'd keep up with things going on in the world, and I appreciated that about grandma. And so, yeah, if I was ever casting a biopic about my grandma, particularly in her older years, from maybe 65 on, I would have cast her in my grandma's, the role of my grandma.
Dirty dopers. Hey, you know what, Grandma?
And she winds up getting into the game. It's important foreshadowing for a plot point later on. Helps with the resolution of the film. A conflict that really arises very late in the film. Like the initial conflict is our main character, Alex, needs a place to stay. The inciting incident is he's evicted forcibly from his home by men who want to remove his testicles through his anus. And he's got no place to go, and he winds up falling back on grandma. But then, obviously, how do we resolve this? I mean, where does that conflict actually go? And so I'll give them credit for introducing a secondary conflict through this character of JP, who is both a romantic rival with Alex for Samantha's affection, but then also, turns out to be more than willing to plagiarize Alex's work on the video game that Alex is developing.
That's true, kid. Doctor, we gotta be careful.
I always loved how Dante always called everybody kid. That's true, kid. Uses the word kid a lot in this movie. I also like the thing they got with the weed, where like different kinds of weed give you different types of high. Like this one turns you into a deer and shit like that. Of course, I'm not a huge weed guy. I didn't smoke a ton of weed in high school. I mean, I smoked my fair share, sure. And I've smoked my fair share since then. Probably smoked more weed since then than I actually, probably smoked more weed in my late 30s and 40s than I did in high school. I really didn't do a lot of that. I was an athlete and was really more trying to be involved with athletics and not trying to be high all the time. So I'm not a huge weed guy. I'm much better with drinking than with marijuana. But I've definitely smoked enough to know that like different strains of marijuana don't turn you into animals or whatever, even in your head. I always liked it anyway. Like I'm fine with suspending my disbelief for a strain of marijuana that will convince you that you're a deer while you're high or whatever else. Frankenstein, the Green Monster. I mean, he gives them all cute names and stuff, and that becomes a joke near the end of the film too, which I really love. This guy's just smoking in his grandma's house. I mean, you would think that grandma would, even if she doesn't recognize the smell of marijuana, let's be real. I mean, she's grandma. She's been around. All right. She lived through the 60s. I'm sure she recognizes the smell of marijuana. Even still, smell of burning anything in her house. I would be very surprised if she didn't mention, like, why does it smell fucking weird in here? Have you been smoking in here? Usually when you stay at someone's house and they don't smoke, whether we're talking tobacco or marijuana or anything, and you do, usually the polite thing is to step outside, and then that way you're not blowing the smoke all throughout the house and getting into furniture and shit. I always had a hard time with this joke too, because I always felt like it was unrealistic that you would burn your hands because you'd be like so high you'd forget to put on like oven mitts. I have recently, in more frazzled states when I've got like kids and I'm trying to make dinner and I'm trying to get dinner, like, wife has just picked up the kids and they're like rolling in and everyone's screaming and I'm like trying to pull something out of the oven. I have one or two times like reached in, like gone for it, like I was reaching and then thought, wait, you feel the heat radiating out and hitting your hand. Whoa, like I'm trying to like pull this thing out bareback, right? I need protection. But I've never gone so far as to actually like grasp with two hands, fully grasp a burning pan. Of course, he's lying to his coworkers to impress them, which I love. I love that he's got this elaborate lie that, I'm banging my roommates and blah, blah, blah. Because the whole thing, he sets up this thing to impress other people, but it winds up blowing up in his face. And of course, he doesn't want Samantha to think that he's boning his roommates because he wants to have a shot with her. And these guys are just, they don't care. They tell Samantha he's banging his roommates because they don't have that social, intelligence, social intelligence, the EQ, emotional intelligence.
All right.
That is a big ass office.
This game has to get finished.
It is a
And you are the
big
most experienced guy I
ass,
have here.
nice ass office.
My hands being burned will not affect me finishing my levels at all.
I sure hope it doesn't.
I mean, the way he grasped that pan, first degree burn at worst. You put a little toothpaste with baking soda on that shit, and it feels fine the next day. I don't think you need to wrap it up like that, like it's some fucking third degree burn and you got like open sores and you got to fucking wrap it up so you don't get infected and shit like that. That's the problem with a really severe burn. But come on, you touched a hot pan for like a second and a half. The way the nervous system works is you don't even have to think about letting something go that's hot. The moment you touch something that's hot, that signal doesn't even travel up to your brain. Do you know that? The impulse from your fingers when they touch something hot travels up the arm, but it only goes to the spine before the reflex activates. It doesn't even have to go all the way up to your brain. So your body literally cannot make a decision about not touching something hot. And here we see some of these other games. They created these games, like other games that they've put out. This company's put out. Gay Robot is one of my favorite. Metal on metal. I don't know what a gay robot game would be like, but I fucking love the idea. And they never really talk about it. They don't mention any of the other games. They talk a little bit about Eternal Death Slayer 3 because that's the game they're working on. They really don't talk about this. You get the idea that they have this like whole, they've been releasing games for years. Brain Nazium is a company and they release games several a year. Phaedrian's Quest, and they intentionally made the women on there a little bit heavy, apparently. That's the story. And how can he see me? JP just being a fucking weirdo in this movie is classic.
Hello, ladies. Enjoying the new cable?
He hooked up cable. That's part of the
You
that's
like that
part of
new
the
channel?
foreshadowing too, is that he hooks up cable and now they won't stop watching TV. They become addicted.
I want to eat the TV. Thanks a lot, Alex. Maybe tomorrow you can introduce him to heroin.
That's a decent joke. Maybe tomorrow you can introduce them to heroin. But it works better because she's being judgmental about getting them hooked on a show and then changing the channel and then immediately getting hooked herself. Works a lot better. Antiques Roadshow.
Yes, you are.
King Gambrinus, who is the patron saint of beer.
So, ladies, I kind of need to use.
So he wants to use the TV, but he hooked up cable. That was a bad idea because now they just want to watch Antiques Roadshow and Emerald or whatever the fuck that cooking show was.
Marathon. Fuck me.
I shouldn't drink beer while I do these because I just want to burp the whole time, which is tremendous no as far as I'm concerned. I think burping in someone's ear if they've got an earbud in is just one of the worst things you can do to somebody.
Hey, Jay Dork, it's Alex. What's going on?
Now this guy's got a TV in his room.
Not much. Look,
I'm
I
just
need
thinking,
a huge favor.
You're not jerking off on
you know,
Very funny. No, I really
even in
need to
2006, small televisions were not crazy expensive. You could get a television and do your levels, you know, if need be. Also, I don't know why he needs to do the work at home. For one thing, there's no video game company in the world, even back in 2006, that was going to let you leave the premises with the asset, right? You're going to take an unreleased video game home to test it for like homework. That was absolutely something that you were going to do inside the office. Any of that proprietary material, they were going to keep that shit under wraps. B, we've already seen that he slept at the office, at least for part of the night, and woke up there the next day before anyone arrived. So clearly he has unfettered, unrestricted access to his office, at least, you know, his level, his desk. So, you know, he goes home and grandma doesn't want to let him use the TV because they're watching Antiques Roadshow all night. You could easily go to work. It's not a huge deal. So that was part of this movie too, where it's like, I got to get my levels done, but I can't get my levels done because grandma won't leave the TV alone and let me do my levels. It's sort of like, well, okay, yeah, but you could get a second television. And if that's not possible, then just go do your work at work, which is where they're going to want you to work anyway. But whatever. I'm willing to ignore issues like that and suspend my disbelief on such things, even though it is kind of silly that the company would let him take a developmental asset like that home, particularly one that's in testing like that, you know, nearly complete. Like he's gonna, I mean, he could pirate the shit out of that.
When the hell did we get this?
Also, let me go on record by saying Dance Dance Revolution is a shitty game for assholes. So I apologize for that hot take, but it's a video game that I'm particularly poor at. So that game can kiss my whole ass.
Yeah, lose the Woody Allen jacket.
It was a thing, you know, 06. The Wii was pretty big. You know, right after that, I guess. I think the Wii was probably like 06, maybe 07. I don't remember. But then, you know, the Wii obviously being popular for several years from, you know, 06 to 2010, you know, somewhere in that neighborhood, you know, 4 or 5 years where the Wii was just, you know, I don't got to tell you, they sold. There's 8 billion people on the planet, and I think they sold 10 billion Wiis. I don't know. The idea is that, you know, for a little while, the Wii was hot shit, and this movie makes me nostalgic. I'm sorry. What do you want from me? I'm going to talk about 2006 more than I'm going to talk about Grandma's Boy. But, of course, you know, Xbox, PlayStation, they had to compete with the Wiis. They had to release things that involve motion and moving and getting up and standing up. And as you may have noticed, in today's current world, video game wise, none of that shit still exists. No one's getting up to swing a remote controller like it's a golf club. Nobody's using the Xbox Connect. What happened to that bitch? I got an Xbox Connect in my basement right now, and I'm not getting rid of it. I'm going to keep it. They're going to bury me with it when I die in 200 years. But The idea is that gamers don't really want to fuck with. Gamers don't really want to fuck with like getting up. That's why whenever we watch something like Ready Player One, my buddy and I watched Ready Player One when it first came out, and we were going to talk about it on a podcast. And he was like, yeah, I could really see the way technology is going with the Oculus and stuff. This could really be a thing. And I'm like, bro, you're 500 pounds. How much do you want to fucking play video games on a treadmill in your living room? Gamers don't want to fucking get up and sweat. If you wanted to get up and sweat, you'd get a gym membership instead of a fucking Xbox, right? If you want to get up and run and sweat and jump and climb shit, go join a fucking rock climbing gym, okay? Go fucking join a karate club and go do some fucking karate. People want to play video games because they want to sit on their asses, and you can't run around inside some virtual reality video game while you're strapped up to 18 million different things. You'd be sweating your balls off, and you can't eat Cheetos while doing that. And that's the whole reason why nobody wants to get up and jump around and do the Xbox Connect shit, Fruit Ninja. I want to be standing in the middle of my living room doing ha 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 and this shit. No, I need this hand for fucking eating the fucking Cheetos and drinking a damn beer.
You know the dwarves and the elves?
Of course, his office is kind of custom. JP here has a custom office that reflects his personal style. It's kind of matrixy. It's sort of, it looks like maybe in the real world on one of the ships, like the Nebuchadnezzar or whatever, the way the chair is and the way it sort of leans back, it looks very much like the chairs that you would lay in to enter the Matrix. And they put the thing in the back of your neck. I don't know why I got to make a sound like that, but now you get to hear that in your mind on repeat. So, his chair looks very Matrix-ish. The monitors, the layout, where he's got his, it's very like he saw the Matrix and he didn't have much of a style of his own. But he knew he needed a style because he's trying to project this sort of like, I'm a video game auteur. I'm this great man who produces these great games. I'm a genius. Calls himself a genius constantly. So, but he needs this. So he can't just be this bland sort of, I don't have a style. He just kind of lifted the Matrix style, like whole cloth. And you get that from his look, but then you also get that from his office and just everything that's custom to him. And the office also shows you, like, it's not, Samantha has a very professional office. There's video game stuff around, but you'd expect that. That's what their company produces. But this is like a normal human being office. You can kind of see a working professional using this office. There's windows, there's fresh light, there's a normal desk, everything's normal. JP, of course, has a different door. It's sliding. You can tell that he's sort of like the diva of the company, that he gets what he wants there at Brainasium, and that Brainasium goes to extra effort to like keep him happy and to give him special things and cater to him and pamper him a little bit. And so you see that in his office, that he has this like really cool custom office with like custom decorations, a custom door, and a different desk where he's like laying back in this Matrix chair instead of sitting upright like Samantha is here. Where she's got like a normal looking desk, like there's a telephone and there's a couple of computers and there's shit spread out and a lamp and stuff like that. It looks all pretty fucking normal. And there's gay robot in the background. Warning, metal on metal action. I mean, I like the idea of a robot having a sexuality, even though a robot is like a thing. It's not like a person. It doesn't have flesh and blood. You could design a robot to be whatever you want, but it certainly doesn't need a penis, and a robot doesn't need sexual desires. But I like the idea that they have a robot that maybe does have a penis, probably does, and also sexual desires to be with other male robots. I like how silly that sounds even coming out of my mouth right now. Alex sleeping under the desk. I actually like that. I actually really, as a joke, I like that. Like he's getting no sleep at home. At least not like he's used to. He gets more sleep than I do, so fuck him and his ass. When I used to feel some sympathy for him when I first watched this movie, like, oh, he's staying up late to work on his levels and his grandma's not letting him sleep.
Cool. I hope it's a naked dude with a boner.
What?
I love that joke because reception calls him.
Come on, let's.
And then, he doesn't sound anything like Alex, but she's like, he says, hello. And there's someone at the front to see you, Alex. Like she totally thinks it's Alex. Like she uses his name, Alex. And it's just a good joke that even though he sounds nothing like it. Nothing like Alex. She still thinks, oh, this is Alex. Cool. I hope it's a naked dude with a boner. I mean, that's like a really juvenile, kind of stupid, like 5th grade thing to say, but that makes me like it even more. And these guys are like really big nerds. You can see they're basically behaving like 10-year-olds, 8-year-olds, or whatever. But I like the idea that that Alex is just so sleepy that he has to sleep at work while he's trying to work at home, but then he's also trying to sleep at work. And I feel like you could get that. You could work that out, like do your levels at work, and then you wouldn't have to do them at home, and then you could sleep at home, and maybe you'd get up early because grandma gets up early. But you could go to bed a little earlier too. There's nothing stopping him from smoking pot and then laying down and going to bed an hour early. In fact, that might even be kind of a nice thing to do.
Used to having man in the house, so I guess we ride him pretty hard.
Oh, that is so gnarly.
I love Jonah Hill's.
I
love Jonah Hill's delivery there. I love Jonah Hill, but I love the idea that like you watch this in 2006, and you might recognize Jonah Hill. I did. I recognized him from 40-Year-Old Virgin, which I think came out the year before this. But he had that small cameo there in 40-Year-Old Virgin, so he'd done some stuff, but it wasn't who wasn't like nominated for an Academy Award, Moneyball, Wolf of Wall Street, Jonah Hill yet. And it's just kind of funny that I would have thought somebody like Nick Swardson would have blown up from this film. I would have thought that as funny as he is, I thought he would have had a much bigger comedic future, a la Adam Sandler or something like that. Maybe he wasn't going to make Academy Award winning films with Leonardo DiCaprio, but I figured he'd have a more like lucrative kind of become a known name. But I don't think many people know who Nick Swardson is outside of like fans of this film, Comedy Central, maybe a few other films. I certainly couldn't ask my mom if she knew who Nick Swardson is. She said, no, I don't fucking know. I could ask my mom if she knew who Jonah Hill is. Oh yeah, guy from Wolf of Wall Street who pulled his dick out. I do love Wolf of Wall Street very, very much, and I love Jonah Hill in that film. Even more than Leonardo DiCaprio. Jonah Hill's character is so fucking watchable in that movie. I fucking love his character in Wolf of Wall Street. And it's funny to see him here. Just I have no idea. In hindsight, it's like, oh yeah, okay, he became this huge star, huge household name. My mom knows who he is. And it's kind of incredible to think about. But that was the payoff on the joke. I'm banging my roommates. My roommates tied me up and they pulled the skin off my dick and it fucked me raw and blah, blah, blah. And then when his grandma and her 2 roommates, 3 75-year-old, 80-year-old women show up to your work and they're like, yeah, we're Alex's roommates. Everybody just assumes, oh my God, you're fucking your grandma and her 2 roommates. It's disgusting. It is absolutely disgusting to think about, having sex with your own grandmother and then her 2 80-year-old roommates is just holy shit. But the joke pays off, in this movie, when they show up for and Jonah Hill is of course like, oh, that's so gnarly. And you can't tell if he's disgusted or impressed. And that's why I say that's good delivery. Hey, at least he's smoking out the window here in that scene, not just smoking up the place. God, in high school, we had there was a house. A buddy of mine, his dad bought a house that was like right near the school. It was like right across the street from the football field. So you'd like walk across the bleachers, and then boom, the house was in a neighborhood right behind the football field. And they had taken possession of the house, but they hadn't moved in yet. So they had the keys and everything like that. The house was completely empty. And I remember one day we all cut out of school early. This must have been like a Wednesday, like noon. And there had to be at least 12, 15 of us, just a bunch of dumb kids. And we probably were 15, 16 at the time. We walk over to this house and we proceed to go up into one of the upstairs rooms, close the bedroom, and every single person lit up some form of weed. We had, pipes, bongs. We had a homemade gravity bong with like a milk jug, joints, and every single person had like their own marijuana. So it wasn't even like we were passing stuff. We were still passing stuff around, but the idea was for everybody to have something lit so that we could really fill the place up with smoke. And we hotboxed that entire room. But not only that, we opened the door and it filled the whole house. The entire house was filled with this cloud of weed smoke. And I'm not sure if I've ever been higher than I was that day. And it was a lot of fun. because we took it on like a project. We just wanted to fill the entirety of this house because, you know, at 15, it's like, A, what else are you going to do? You ain't got shit else to do. B, it was also like the novelty of this thing. Like, I've never had the opportunity to do this before. We have this opportunity that's really we're not going to have again, or may not ever have again, and we only have for a limited time. So like, let's all skip school on a Wednesday and go fucking spend 4 hours smoking weed inside this house and completely fill the thing up with smoke. I love it. Kevin Nealon is great in this film too. I appreciate his. I believe him. I'm buying him. I mean, honestly, he's not going to get nominated for anything for this film, but nonetheless, I'm buying him as this character. He just seems like this older character who's kind of disconnected. He's sort of the boss of this place, but he doesn't really know a whole lot about video games. And, you know, his personality might be as fake as JP's or as put on as JP's, where, you know, he's just older. So it's like an earlier generation. So he picked this like sort of 70s, like later stage hippie, where it's like a lot of new age shit, very Asian. Like you saw him sipping the tea and doing yoga on his desk in his very like Asian decorated office. You get the idea that, you know, just anything that's like Asian or Buddhist is like, it's cool. And I'm going to drink fucking Asian tea and green tea and shit and do yoga and be like a big hippie kind of like an older hip. Like I basically held on to the hippie thing. You could imagine him having been a hippie at Woodstock in the 60s as a young man and then just kind of holding on to that and never really growing past that. So I think you have a lot of that in this film. I don't think this film intends to be an analysis on men who refuse to grow up, but to some degree it becomes one, right? You've got the main character, Alex, who's a almost 36-year-old living with his own grandmother, smoking pot incessantly, and basically working an more or less entry level job as a video game tester. What is he making? $30,000 a year, $35,000 a year? What do you suppose his salary is as a video game tester? It's probably a cool job. It sounds a lot like a cool job. You get to play video games for a living, but it can't be a great living judging from the shithole he was living in at the beginning. So he's this adult that just, you know, by all rights, he should have a wife. He should have a couple of kids. He should have a stable career. He should own a home. He should have money invested in a 401k. But he's just I described myself a moment ago at 15, hotboxing this house, and that's what he is. Except he's more than double that age. And then you also have JP, who, while he's not quite as old as Alex's character, I mean, again, he's sort of this child in that he doesn't really know who he wants to be, and he's got a sense of who he's supposed to be, and so he adopts this whole persona that's like Matrix. And he just made a comment about like he's going to watch the bonus features of Buffy and stuff like that. It's just, you know, he wanted Samantha to beg him to come to dinner or whatever, but he had to act like he was too cool to go. And so he's kind of this adult child too, because he's got these very underdeveloped social skills, and he's very you know, he's kind of incapable of making these social connections and understanding these social cues. Like Samantha clearly doesn't like him and is clearly off put by the way he sort of talks around her with like the whole milady shit. Like he's like the neckbeard, the fedora tipping neckbeard, my lady and shit like that.
Fucking idiot,
Love this
red-shirted
part.
ass.
Red-shirted
You guys think you're
ass.
so fucking cool. Makes me sick. Let's go make fun of the vegans and their crazy lifestyle. We're not hurting anyone. Go eat a hamburger and choke on a cow dick.
Oh, someone missed their yoga class.
That's still a great insult. Go eat a hamburger and choke on a cow dick. Excellent insult that I do still like saying to people. That's another reason why I love this film. Granted, this is not Citizen Kane. That's fine. We knew this going in. It's not Citizen Kane. And yet, a film's quality really relies on your ability to enjoy it. And I've seen this film 25 times at least, maybe more, because it's an enjoyable film. It's got really great characters, very memorable lines. And then it becomes a sort of a deconstruction of these men who refuse to grow up. And in some ways, Mr. Cheezel, that's Kevin Nealon's character, similarly, you know, he refuses to grow out of this phase that was really over when the 70s ended. I mean, he doesn't look like one of the Woodstock hippies, but he looks like slightly grown up version. Like a version of a Woodstock hippie that also passed through the 70s. But it's that type of like bohemian, hipster, all natural, crunchy granola. He very much feels like a hippie that grew through the 70s, lived through the 70s, sort of this post 60s like hippie, who really just kind of stopped aging at a certain point in his development. So again, developmentally stunted men in this film that work in this video game industry. So it really, I know I watched both commentaries included on this disc right here. There are 2 commentaries. I watched both commentaries. So, and it's different filmmakers on each commentary. So I've heard everything that the filmmakers have to say about this film that they made, and never at any point in time did they aspire to anything so lofty as like a deconstruction of this phenomena of this male that refuses to grow up. But I think they did it by accident, by being fairly honest about like who they are and who these characters are.
No, it's not that late. It's right around the corner. We can totally go. It's an emergency.
Coming upon one of my favorite parts of the movie. So they're having beers in the parking lot, which is awesome. Fun thing to do, but you're not going to do that all night, right? And then they get there because this guy's got a shit. Nick Swartzen's character's has a numero dos andale. Does that sound like Spanish to you? Numero dos andale. Like, it's pretty witty. I always laughed at that. I always thought that was funny. When they get inside to see that the grandmothers are just completely ripped. What happened? They brewed the tea, right? In Sophie's memory. They thought it was Sophie's tea. They had no idea that they drank his weed. Also, we see Jonah Hill with a case of Steel Reserve. It's the worst beer in the entire world. But I mean, I have fond memories of, parties that just happened by complete accident. Like you could not have put something together that was that fun if you tried, because it just, the stars align. Everybody's in a mood to tie one on, and clearly everyone in the scene is. And the drugs are kicking in, and everyone's starting to have fun, and the beers are flowing, and he grips his butt as he runs off screen, which I think is another great little detail. And she's pinching Jonah Hill's cheeks. He must have hated that. Oh, and they just start dancing, everyone's partying, and then a party just kind of happens. And I love the scene because it's a great party. And it's a little cliched, some of the camera work that comes up in just a moment. Grandma's drinking a Steel Reserve. Steel Reserve is the worst goddamned beer. Oh, can't drink that shit. I would honestly rather drink Hobo Piss than Steel Reserve.
Excuse me.
Yeah, so she's high, and he's wondering what's going on.
We were getting ready for bed.
She explains what happened. Like I found this tea in Sophie's room.
Tea.
What tea?
Sophie's tea.
That was foreshadowing earlier when he hid the marijuana in the tin. He hides his bag of weed in the tin, and that's just good foreshadowing, right? Like why else would you shoot? They got the camera and they showed like a actual cut away to, a shot of him inserting close up his hand inserting the weed into the tin. Why do you film that unless it's going to become significant later?
That is great.
So anytime they cut to something that they specifically filmed a close-up shot of, that's going to be important later. Just keep that in your brain. And so here we find out Samantha's a bit of a pothead too. Like, wow, okay, maybe she's on his level. Maybe they have things in common, Alex and her.
Yeah,
Call that weirdo Dante.
I'll get you your fix.
I like that too, because Alex is obviously friends with Dante. He's friends with his co-worker, who's played by Nick Swartzen. But like the co-worker and Dante, they're like different enough that it's like, oh yeah, call that weirdo. Like, here's where everybody comes together.
This isn't the
all walks of life coming together to get fucked up in grandma's house.
Why is it Frankenstein?
And I used to think, man, that would be so weird to get fucked up in my grandma's house with a whole bunch of people, until I got old enough and I started getting fucked up in my grandma's house with a whole bunch of people. And so here's the kind of cliched shot again, like how many parties in films have, a steady cam moving through, this steady cam shot that moves through the party. But there's a reason it's cliched, right? There's a reason why norms are norms. It's because it works, right? It creates the sense of space. It also gives the impression that there's a whole bunch of people here There's a bunch of stuff going on. There's some people partying in this room. There's karaoke going on over here. These two folks are over there. It gives you this sense of space, and it also gives you the sense that the space is filled with people who are partying and having fun. And so it does a good job of kind of establishing what's happening in this scene, and give you an idea of like this whole milieu of people that have come over to grandma's house to party.
Do you mean that piece of rabbit fur you rub on your dick every night?
That's an odd line. A piece of rabbit fur you rub on your dick every night.
Yeah.
It's like these guys don't have girlfriends, so you got to make fun of them.
That's why Dr. Shockley was hooking me up with a monkey. I'm going to teach you Taekwondo.
You're gonna teach a monkey Taekwondo. Apparently, this guy speaks a bunch of different languages.
Probably safer.
Yeah, who plays Dr. Shockaloo.
Who wants some cereal?
Guinness is also terrible beer, but it's better than Steel Reserve.
Colonel Crackers is the best.
Colonel Crackers. It's amazing, you know. You think, okay, yeah, they use Colonel Crackers because they can't use Captain Crunch, right? You know, they don't want to get in trouble with, you know, copyright holders, get sued by fucking General Mills or whoever. But as you continue to watch the scene, keep your eye out. You'll see other product placement. We've just seen brands like Steel Reserve and Guinness in full display. You saw the label. It said Guinness on it. We saw a Sierra Nevada. There was a Sierra Nevada there in front of Alex's character. Also in an earlier scene, there was one on Dante's coffee table. There's a Sierra Nevada quite clearly. There's obviously a Sierra Nevada. I can't quite see the label where it says Sierra Nevada, but come on. If you've had more than 2 beers in your lifetime, anybody that older than 12, I don't know, that's a Sierra Nevada.
Traffic meter. Oh, that's not it.
His home is equally weird.
Shit.
Very like modern, sort of matrixy.
This game is falling apart.
A lot of fluorescent lights.
You're letting everyone down. No, I'm not.
He's got this super pale skin. Also, he's wearing makeup here. You know, you can see the eyeliner for sure. You know, it's funny that he would do that at home, like wear makeup to just sit by yourself and program a video game. I don't know. Also, this would be a great time to mention as this song begins. I'm turning it up a little bit. This film has an incredible soundtrack. And that's not bullshit. This film has an amazing soundtrack. Like there was a thing, and if you're old enough, you'll remember. He's about to suck on some boobies. Those are some fake looking boobies. I hate to say it, but come on, guys. Them titties would stop a bullet. I don't know if you've ever felt a fake boobie, but that shit looks like a cantaloupe at a store, you know, like you squeeze it and it's just fucking hard, you know? Fake titties never really appealed to me in that way. Like the ones that are just like they don't fucking move when the person moves because they're just like, I don't know, it's like fucking it's like the Laura Croft doll that he masturbated to earlier. It's like just this piece of plastic. It's immobile, you know, like you want something that moves a little bit. The fake boobies just never. And I like that she's not better than him at video games. I like that he still beats the shit out of her at video games. Like, yeah, she bragged earlier about how she was beating her brothers in Super Mario or whatever. It's like, you know, whatever. She's bragging a little bit. But then what happens when they actually play video games? He kicks her butt. Of course, you'd expect that. This film were made today, then she would have to win because she's the girl, and it has to subvert the main character, who's a male, a little bit. In this case, we weren't quite at that trope yet. And so he gets to beat her at video games. It's part of the flirtation, though. Like she loses, and then what happened? She jumped on him. And you can see over the course of this party scene them becoming closer. They're finding that they have things in common, that they're enjoying each other's company. And so it really, even though she's far more attractive than Alan Covert, I mean, you know, he doesn't even have money. He's ugly, thinning hair. And, well, I shouldn't say ugly. That's mean. He's not Brad Pitt, thinning hair, and you know, he's not even rich. She is quite attractive, and obviously in a much better like fiscal position than he is. And she still, you know, managed to build this sort of organic relationship between the two of them that it doesn't, at least to me, feel like forced. I like that. She does 3 shots. Someone is getting laid tonight. like she's just gonna pass out. This joke falls flat. Like everyone's laughing and he farts, tries to blame it on the kid.
We're not in the rainforest, man.
My beef strong. Your beef wrong.
Yes, that never really worked for me as a joke, but whatever.
Wow.
Shirley here gave Charlie Chaplin a hand job at one point. And then the you know, Nick Swartzen's response, was he silent? I mean, that's
dirty old whore.
stupid, but pretty funny. The first time I saw it, that made me laugh pretty hard, I have to admit. He grabs a titty and then he's like, yes, and just goes for it. Of course, somebody has to bang a grandma, you know? I mean, there was the rumor that Alex was banging his grandma and her roommates, but it wasn't true. And so, you know, somebody had to make it true that one of these grandmas has got to get fucked in this movie. And I like that this film doesn't shy away from one of these 80-year-old grandmas getting railed by a dude that could be her grandson, young enough to be her grandson. And she does wasted pretty good, like when she gets up and she's just kind of stumbling but not overselling it. So that was pretty good. She's like not overselling it. Like she still has like most of her faculties, but sounds fairly drunk when she does that. Oh, sounded really drunk. And this is the part that apparently she ad-libbed, which is why I think she's probably a pretty cool, like as a person. Like she ad-libs this whole, obviously she was supposed to sing Salt and Pepper, but she's supposed to sing Push It, but like everything else, like all of the dancing, all of the, like the, whatever that is, the pseudo twerking or whatever you might call that, grabbing her own ass and humping the thing and, you know, just looking drunk. Here in a moment, she's going to try to lick her own titty. And apparently that was completely ad-libbed too. Because imagine directing an actress, you know, an attractive actress who has starred in real films. Imagine directing her like, okay, so at this point, right before you fall over and pass out drunk, you are going to grab your own breast and pull it toward your mouth, get your tongue out as far as you can, and really try to lick your own titty in front of everybody. That is almost something that has to be ad-libbed. And then I love this too. Like this is completely unrealistic, and yet I love it. Like he wakes up, it's the next day. Everybody's done this. You haven't lived if you haven't woken up and wondered, where the fuck am I? What the fuck happened? I don't remember going to sleep. And the reveal is that he slept on the fucking like just a kitchen counter, and he used a oven mitt as a pillow. You see where his head was the pillow. And it's a cute scene too, because they're bonding over the photos. And
you know, for a minute I thought
I think that's pretty cute. It sort of cements the fact that, you know, she likes him.
That was his first day at high school.
I thought that joke worked really well. Like, what Halloween was that? That wasn't Halloween. That was his first day of high school, you know? Looking very 80s.
Okay, the sheriff
You can see his pee-pee. I like that. His pants are so tight you can see his dick. You can see his pee-pee. That's what the grandma would say. Very cute.
Impressive.
I'm a genius. What can I say?
Well, you were up till high school. And then all of
I like
a
the
sudden
idea
you
of the
got
grandma busting out the photo albums and then like the would-be girlfriend actually enjoying it. It's not just a matter of like, hey, we have fun, we get hammered together, but it's sort of like sweet too. And this is a sweet moment. You know, that's the grandpa, that's the husband. Passed away 10 years ago last month. And you know, you get this kind of heartfelt scene.
That's why I like Alex to be in the
This
house.
actress here, she'd lost her husband as
Makes
well.
me feel closer to him.
So she's not even acting right there.
He
She'd
loved
lost her
you
husband
so
some years
much.
before this was filmed.
I loved him. And I love you. I love being your roommate.
And so that's kind of a sweet scene. That's kind of a heartfelt, you know, talking about how your family, when they get old, they pass on, and you know, you have memories of them, and you remember how you loved them and they loved you, and so he's kind of open about it. He's not embarrassed. You know, she says, oh, he loved you so much. Well, I loved him, and I love you. I love being your roommate. And he's not, you know, like JP, you know, a more emotionally stunted person wouldn't be able to admit that. So, you know, even though I've made a cogent argument for why Alex's character is fairly well stunted. I mean, he's a child in a grown man's body, but he was emotionally mature enough there to just handle that in front of a girl he likes, a cute girl he likes that he works with, that, you know, he was able to handle that without too much difficulty and just say, you know, I loved him too, and I love you, and I love being your roommate. And, you know, matter of factly, very casually. And then this is a great scene too. They're having their pillow talk. So there's a little bit of people left over from the party. Barry is still sucking the titty while the stripper eats Colonel crackers.
Really? Oh, that's sweet.
I like her number.
Let's see. You were my,
You were my first.
I don't know, 3,000 something.
3,000 something. And that's a lot. You divide 3,000 by 365 and you get an idea of how many years that is. And it seems unlikely. I have to admit, it seems unlikely that she would be able to run through that many dudes. But that's like a dude a day for like quite a number of her adult years. Maybe every other day. If we want to extend that into her 70s and 80s. I mean, I hear old people bone like a motherfucker at the old folks' home. So, also this song.
So I will.
You can't hear it too well during the dialogue scenes. They're probably gonna turn it up here when he walks away and there's no dialogue. This song is one of the best. It's actually my favorite on the soundtrack. This is Spin Doctors, Can't Kick the Habit. Such a great song. Such a fantastic song. I tell you what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna put this soundtrack up on Patreon. If you guys are patrons, I love you that much. It was a thing, right? Back in like the 80s when a movie would come out, 90s when a movie would come out and it was like a big deal, like The Crow. I remember when The Crow, the Brandon Lee, like the first version of The Crow came out, and the soundtrack had Stone Temple Pilots on it and The Cure and a number of others. And it was like almost as big a deal as the movie itself was, right? Like you would go out and buy a movie soundtrack and they were just compilation albums. I mean, sometimes they would have original tracks by famous bands on them that you couldn't get elsewhere. But like in the example I just gave of The Crow, yeah, The Big Empty was on there by Stone Temple Pilots, but that was available on the album Purple. You didn't have to buy The Crow in order to get that song. Coneheads, the Dan Aykroyd film Coneheads had a soundtrack. You could go buy the CD and it had fucking Red Hot Chili Peppers on it. What I'm saying is a movie soundtrack was a big deal back then. It was a big tie-in and they expected to move units. Like, why else do you put Red Hot Chili Peppers in a Coneheads movie and then sell the soundtrack with the Red Hot Chili Peppers on it? In the 90s, when Red Hot Chili Peppers were phenomenally huge. I mean, they're still pretty popular these days, but what I'm saying is this is incredible that the soundtrack used to be such a big thing and it is not anymore. And I really regret that. But this is one of the last films where the soundtrack was like a thing. Like you can go buy a CD of the soundtrack. And I know that because I did probably like back in 2007. I mean, very early on, I recognized that the soundtrack to this film is excellent. And that is an amazing soundtrack. And because I love you guys, because you're patrons, I will load the soundtrack up to Patreon so you guys can grab those tracks. Worst case scenario, I'll just load them to like Google Drive and I'll put a Google Drive link up in the comments to this post. This Patreon post. When I post this video on Patreon,
What do you mean?
I'll save the entire soundtrack to a Google Drive folder, and then I'll link that folder in the comments so you guys can go, don't take my word for it. Go listen to the soundtrack.
So where's
It is
Alex? Did he
incredible.
take the day off and die
It's a
alone?
really, really good soundtrack.
No, he went to lunch with Samantha.
And it's filled with music from genres that I don't much care for, but the Spin Doctors Can't Kick the Habit. I mean, you hear Spin Doctors a lot in movies, right? Two Princes especially. Pocket Full of Kryptonite was like their album. The Two Princes one you hear a ton, but again, it's cliched and overplayed. But how many original Spin Doctor songs do you hear in a film that was released in the 21st century? Not a lot. And Can't Kick the Habit, excellent, amazing song. It's like an 8-minute long song. They thought they were Led Zeppelin for a minute there. Now, JP, of course, reveals a little bit of his inner. I don't think he's playing Alex here. Like he's crying, he's sniveling, he's it's somewhat disgusting, but then you see this kind of like he has this facade this sort of persona built on top of like this, and like, you know, who cries? Children cry, right? Grown adult males are not expected to cry, especially to sob like this, outside of maybe the most tragic events that you can imagine. You know, the loss of a loved one, untimely and unexpected way. You know, you might expect a man to really sob like this, but this is, I mean, he's intentionally sobbing in the way that a child would, what you would expect of a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old. I don't even think my 4-year-old quite sobs like that, although I will say my 4-year-old can throw quite a tantrum.
Everyone at Brain Amazing totally respects you.
My 1-year-old's got a fucking temper too, let me tell you that.
You were just a kid.
Surprisingly for a 1-year-old.
I am pretty amazing.
But here we see JP, and I don't think JP is acting. Like, I don't think this is something that JP's doing. He notices demonic, and this is, I mentioned earlier, there's sort of the conflict of our main character needing a place to live and having been evicted, and then that sort of fades because, you know, he resolved that. He's living with his grandma now for time being at least. And then we need this secondary conflict, like what's going to get us through the rest of the film. And we've built this character JP up as an antagonist to Alex's character. So here we're going to have that conflict is going to bear fruit, where there wasn't a real big inciting event there. They've built him up to sort of take over. It's like Indiana Jones, like switching out the golden idol for the bag of sand. They're sort of switching out one early conflict of the film for a latter conflict. And, you know, it's the type of thing you'd see more in like a television program where, like, over the course of a season, they're telling several stories that are maybe interwoven, and there's a few conflicts that happen, and one conflict sort of leads to another. You don't see that as much in a motion picture, where it tends to be more straightforward, and there's a single conflict that must be resolved by the end of the film. And yeah, there's some twists and turns along the way. The nature of the conflict might change, etc. But here, you know, we see that, you know, JP notices the game. He asks about it. Alex is honest about what the game is, and even, you know, JP offers to give him some notes, and here we have another inciting incident there with that scene. And but I don't think JP was playing him. I mean, JP didn't know about the game when he went over there, so, you know, what's with all the sobbing? It just, you know, I think that was the real kind of, that's the child underneath the JP facade.
He got his red belt. He's a quick learner. Monkey. Sucker. Punch. Oh, I got this fat lip.
So he's got this fat lip. He's got to point it out in front of the camera, because he's going to have the fat lip for the rest of the movie. Even in the very last scene, he's got like a little makeup on his lip and make it look a little swollen. The monkey is aggressive. That's what we're learning, is that they keep getting these animals, which they're no doubt bringing in through illicit channels. You don't, I mean, I'm sure a guy who smokes weed in his basement and deals drugs for a living, predominantly, I'm sure he's not importing animals from foreign countries, Asia, Africa, etc., in any legal channel. Can't be importing a chimpanzee legally. There has to be an incredible amount of you know, overhead for that. You gotta fill out forms and shit. Like he's full on Chinese. Like he's not even, not like he's like 3/4 Chinese. This dude's like 100% Chinese. And he does Taekwondo, which is a Korean martial arts figure. The filmmakers knew that, by the way. That seems like a detail that the filmmakers would like, oh, they just didn't understand that Taekwondo is a Korean martial art, and they call Mr. Lee Ho full on Chinese. But it's a terrible CGI, but I don't care. He's got the fucking guitar over his head. They intentionally said that the Chinese guy was doing a Korean martial art, and in defending it, they're like, well, why not? Why can't a Korean guy learn, or why can't a Chinese guy learn a Korean martial art? I mean, American folks learn all kinds of martial arts, Japanese, Korean, and otherwise. Why can't a Chinese guy do a Korean martial art? That's a good point. Don't tell me your grandma beats you. That's more believable than what I would. This movie is filled with such good one-liners that you could use as non sequiturs. Like if you bump into a buddy, if he's got a broken leg, he hurts himself skiing or whatever, the first time you see him, don't tell me your grandma beats you. Here is where we learn that JP is plagiarizing Alex's game. And we get another really, really very difficult to believe plot point. It's very hard for me to swallow this plot point. I do anyway because I love this film. But
This is my game. I want to watch.
he's like, shut up, I
Hey,
wanna watch.
no, stop,
Honestly,
please.
his friend,
This is my game.
you know, it's one of his best friends, would know about the game. It's not like it.
I've
No
been
one at the
following
table, like
this
maybe
game for
Brainasium
a
wouldn't know
year.
about the game because he doesn't want
Talking
Brainasium
about.
to take
I've
it
been
over as
working
an
on this game
asset.
all year.
A lot
I
of
know that
lot of
she's a lot
a lot of
shit.
places of employment will have you sign agreements whereby anything that you develop during your employment there is that's not your intellectual property anymore. That's intellectual property of the company. So if they can prove that he did it on their time or using their technology, that's their game. And you know, so he doesn't want to lose it. Makes sense.
Oh,
Quiet about your own intellectual property.
Just trying to get into your pants.
Dude,
But,
I'll come over there and kick your
You know,
robot
he
head
just
right
claimed
off
that he
that
doesn't
seat.
have
Alex,
he doesn't have the he doesn't have any other discs. It's the only copy of the game.
Challenge him,
But
dude.
there is no way that and he claims to have been developing the game for about 3 years. There is no way that you spend 3 years developing a game and you don't have any other assets to show for it. You don't have any code, you don't have any sketches, you don't have anything to show except for one testing disc where the game is basically done.
Fuck energy, fuck JP, fuck Brainasium, fuck all of you, I quit.
Wait.
It's a great line too. Fuck energy, fuck JP, fuck Brainasium, fuck all of you, I quit. That's an excellent way to quit. I have yet to quit a job in such a dramatic fashion, but one day I do hope to quit a job in such a dramatic fashion. I just want to tell everyone to get fucked and then leave. Just storm out.
Never been brave enough to try that.
One man is. Roll it.
I'll smoke it with you, bro. We'll go to the loony bin together. I don't give a fuck.
I always love that line too. You know, he's like, obviously the payoff of all of the different strains of marijuana having different names and different effects is that at the end of the movie, you can say, take the green monster, the deer shit, the green monster, the bling, and the bling bling. I want you to roll it all into one joint. And he's like, oh my God, no one's ever been crazy enough to try that. One man is, roll it. I'll smoke it with you, bro. We'll go in the loony bin together. I don't give a fuck. That is an excellent line. I'll smoke it with you, bro. We'll go to the loony bin together. I don't give a fuck. That is an awesome line. That's how you tell a friend that you're a friend. That's how you tell a friend, like, I got your back. We'll go to fucking prison together. I don't give a fuck. Like, I have your back. I mean, that's a true friend. And that's a great line. And of course, then it, you know, they create this. Two people don't need a joint that big. Even professional smokers like these guys, you don't need a joint that big.
Don't judge me, monkey.
It's another one of the absolute best lines of the film. Don't judge me, monkey. I say that to this day. I know I've made that claim about a lot of lines in this film that I will occasionally use. Honestly, on a weekly basis, I tell someone not to judge me, and then I call them monkey. I do that with my kids a lot, and they have no idea. Like my 4-year-old has no idea. She hasn't seen Grandma's Boy. I'm gonna wait till she's at least 6 to show her Grandma's Boy. She has no idea, but I will look at my 4-year-old and say, "Don't judge me, monkey." My wife, oh my God, I can't tell you. We've been together 10 years. I have probably said that to her 10,000 times in the 10 years we've been together. Don't judge me, monkey. If she catches me eating something, like if she comes in the room and I'm having like a cookie or a brownie or some shit, I will say, don't judge me, monkey. And she knows exactly where it's from because we've watched this movie high as fuck, I might add.
What is that ringing?
A couple times.
Do I have a tumor?
Do I have a tumor? I always love that too.
Hello.
Hey, Dante, is Alex there?
This is really where the movie starts to gel for me. From the party on, this movie really like it's accelerates a little bit. It builds this momentum throughout the course of the film. But by the time we've hit this part, it's like rolling forward, and there's just so much to love. Who is this?
This is more of Albert.
I don't think marijuana gets you that fucked up. I had some very nice opioids after I got my wisdom teeth extracted when I was like, I don't know, 14, 15. I got my wisdom teeth out and they gave me some shit. And I do remember there was like a 3-day period where I was on the shit that they gave me pretty much consistently. It was like 3 pills a day, but I was just fucked up for like 3 days. You know, like it's like you get the shit done on a Friday morning and you don't remember any of your life. And then like suddenly it's Monday and it's like, what the fuck happened? But I do remember like it was over the summer, so I wouldn't have to miss any school if I was out for a little bit. And I do remember getting a phone call and I answered the phone. And I remember just ever so vaguely having the most nonsensical conversation with someone. because I was whacked out of my brain. I was talking about like bowling and like splits and knocking the pins down and getting a spare and shit like that. Like I was like legit going through some fucking like kingpin level bowling strategy with this person. And I want to say they were a coworker calling me about picking up a shift or something. It was like they were not ready for that conversation. But I was, because I was fucked up on opioids. Don't do that shit, people. I'm gonna tell you right now. The painkillers they put me on were too much. And I'm gonna tell you, don't fuck around with that shit. I got lucky. I'm still here breathing. But other motherfuckers have not been as lucky as me. So don't fuck with that shit, y'all. Take a fucking Tylenol and grit your teeth, because you don't want to fuck with those pain pills. Now, somehow, of course, Alex has no assets, no code, no sketches, no fucking storyboards, no dialogue, nothing. And I mean, there's dialogue, I will taste your flesh. There's dialogue already recorded in the game. So you'd think there'd be somebody who recorded that dialogue that could vouch for him. Instead, they have to have this head-to-head match where Lily, the grandma, has to fight JP one-on-one in this multiplayer bout. This game in order to prove that it's Alex's game. Even though she knew all about the game, she wouldn't have known about the game if Alex was lying. I like that Murder She Wrote on. It's 4:00 Murder She Wrote on, and they're just see. This is how it's like. It's built that they've laid the groundwork. They make fun of the old people for being old, and obviously Nick Swartzen's character is like getting with the older lady, and that happened earlier in the party scene. But they still have a thing going. I fucking love it. So she's able to pull off this finishing move that JP clearly didn't even know about. He looked surprised. And so that's how they prove that it's Alex's game. Lily banishes JP. And he sort of has his fucking robot breakdown, which is great. The monkey's kissing everybody. So I really think this film kind of rises to an excellent climax.
I had a dream last night. I was a snake slithering through the
And Kevin Nealon really sells this. I mean, this is good. Again, like it's not going to win any Academy Awards, but this is a film that I've easily watched 24 times. Easily. I can't say the same for Citizen Kane. I can't say the same for Rules of the Game. And I do love Rules of the Game. I mean, I do love Jean Renoir. I mean, but how many times have I seen The Grand Illusion? Twice, maybe? I don't know, 3 times?
Okay, JP, let's go.
Seven Samurai. Other Kurosawa is great stuff, but who's got 4.5 hours for Seven Samurai?
Please sit on my feet.
It's another excellent line. I mean, it's hard to say that this film stands in a crowd of Criterion Collection films. Criterion Collection could never put this out, even though they put out Armageddon and The Rock. So I would say that, they do on occasion put out some schlocky. I mean, they've put out Nick Cage and Ben Affleck movies. So would it be that weird for a Grandma's Boy Criterion Collection release? Yeah, it would. It would be really kind of weird and fucked up. But I would buy it day one. I would pre-order that shit. But this that I show you right here, this is practically a Criterion. It's got 2 directors' commentaries. Well, it's got 2 commentaries. One is the director and the other is the screenwriters and main actors. Regardless, it's not the quality of film that you would expect from like an art house cinema. It's not,
Dude, a bag of weed would have been fine.
but it's very enjoyable. And where's the line? They ordered an elephant. I don't know how the fuck you smuggle an elephant in. Here we have a song that was written for. This is fucking Cool Keith. If you listen to this song, it's this is on the soundtrack too, by the way. You can hear that this is clearly a custom written song for this film because it references all of the events of the story and character names and everything, and it is included on the soundtrack. So you will have a chance to hear this song in all of its glory. And bookending the film is another. We had the intro that was very Galaga themed, and then we have the Gallagher themed outro, which is very, very nice. Kind of bookends the film and reminds us of our video game motif throughout this film. And again, it's a tight film. It is we're at what hour and a half, and we got the closing credits. So I don't know. I think there's something to be said. I think there is some defense that could be mounted for this, and I think there is definitely a critical reading of this as a critique and a commentary on a relatively recent phenomena of grown adult men who do not behave like grown adult men and who refuse to grow up. And I may speak about that again on maybe like a movie mass episode. I'll dive into that a little bit because that's kind of a thing. I mean, I'm sure every generation had it, but I think our generation more than any, we've got people who are obsessed with entertainment. We've got people who they don't work jobs, they don't have a job at a factory. I'm an influencer or some other such bullshit. Something like that where I make money because I don't know. I've got an Instagram page and there's a million people who follow me or whatever. The idea that you can, grift somehow and you don't ever really have to grow up, and it's sort of a Peter Pan thing. And Peter Pan is well more than 100 years old at this point, 115 years old or so at this point. So like the idea of somebody not wanting to grow up, of not wanting to enter the adult world. I mean, I don't think it's a tremendously new concept, but I definitely think it gets a little bit more attention these days, and there's more visibility on that. So I do think that you could possibly, if you wanted to approach this film in an artistic way, that is the angle in. Otherwise, I think it's like, a more artistic director, Martin Scorsese, he makes films that are insanely watchable as well. I mentioned Wolf of Wall Street. That film, as well as Goodfellas, are films that I can watch over and over and over and over again. I watch them once a year at least, Goodfellas and Wolf of Wall Street, and my wife too. My wife will watch Goodfellas and Wolf of Wall Street. She agrees with me that the Scorsese films are incredible. These are films that get nominated for Academy Awards and are considered, artistically meritorious enough that they deserve the accolades. Where this film, no one's going to argue that this film deserves that type of recognition, but I don't know, maybe it does. I mean, I think there should be something to say for films that go on to become cult films where there's entire online communities, subreddits of people who have every line of the film memorized. How many films got panned at the time that turned out to be classics that are recognized these days? Blade Runner is one that calls to mind. Roger Ebert actually had to walk back his initial review on Blade Runner. Initially, he panned it. He thought it was no good. And then what happened with Blade Runner? It held on. People loved it. It's incredible. It's a landmark film in the cyberpunk genre. Ridley Scott, Harrison Ford. I mean, how do you say anything bad about the first Blade Runner? And even Roger Ebert eventually had to change his tune. He said, "You know what? I got that one wrong," because it's endured. And I think endurance, as much as anything, is the mark of a good film. And I think this film is one that has endured quite well. It's not one that's, it's a little bit dated, of course, but it's not incredibly dated. Like the humor, there's a certain I think there's a certain there's a certain evergreen quality to the humor where stuff like the grandma stuff. I mean, everybody's got a grandma, right? I mean, that's something that's relatively timeless. So there is a timeless quality, I think, to some of the humor, even if the original Xbox, is not a thing anymore. Who cares? That's not that important. It could be a Xbox 360. It could be a PlayStation 5. It doesn't matter. But you guys do need to check out that soundtrack. It is excellent. And I want to say, if you've made it this far, thank you so much for checking out the Team Almy commentary for Grandma's Boy. I really appreciate it. I like doing these commentaries. I think they're an awful lot of fun. I think there's a lot of films out there that deserve a commentaries. There's a lot of films that don't get them anymore. I feel like, in the heyday of DVDs, around the time that this was released, 2006, 2007, those were the years that saw the greatest amount of DVD and Blu-ray sales And since then, it's been downhill thanks to streaming mostly. And with streaming, of course, you don't get commentary tracks. You don't get the type of like loving special features that really, if you love a movie, you want that extra content. So that's something I'm happy to provide for films like this one that are just, incredible classic films, at least in my book. So hopefully you enjoyed it, and we'll be back with the next one in the future at some point in time if I don't die first. If you've made it this far, I love you. Check out the soundtrack. Tell me what you think, and see you on the next one. Adios, fools.